today's video, you will find out why the royal oak was Audemars Piguet's lifeboat to survive the Japanese quartz tsunami wave and saved this traditional Swiss company from drowning. To date, there are over 550 different models of the royal oak, and without this sports watch, AP might not even exist anymore. For today's video, we have selected 3 models that we would like to introduce you briefly with their key data. Even though the original idea behind the royal oak was that the material alone does not make a masterpiece. Let's start with the 18 karat gold reference 4100 BA. With this reference, AP broke its own rules. When it was launched as the third version of the royal oak in 1977, it was the first to be available in gold, and not just steel. It also featured a central second hand, and at 35 mm was designed for those who found the jumbo models too large with 39 mm. As you can see on this old advertisement, it came in 3 models: 18 karat yellow gold, steel and two-tone. Then we have 2 indirect royal oaks from the 1980s. The 6005 Jumbo, which despite the bracelet and the similarities in design language was never referred to as a royal oak, but simply as a quartz line. The 1 Jumbo 6005 BA has a 32 mm solid yellow gold case with sapphire crystal, an unsigned push-eye crown, a polished gold bezel and a yellow gold hobnail dial with yellow gold stick hands. The second reference 6005 SA is identical, but has a two-tone steel and gold case and a grey micro tapperry dial with yellow gold stick hands. These 2 6005 Jumbos are an unusual addition to the already exceptional royal oak family. It is fancy, interesting and fun, while offering great value for money in the luxury sports watch segment. But what actually is a sports watch? Not a difficult question actually. A sports watch is a watch that is worn doing sport. A watch for use, robust and easy to read, not too heavy and preferably not too expensive. So in case you break it during sport, you just buy another one. At least that was the common definition of watch lovers until the early 1970s, when the Japanese quartz wave swept Europe and the cheap battery-operated quartz movement overtook the mechanical movement and almost wiped out the previously unchallenged mechanical watch. Hard to imagine nowadays, but even Audemars Piguet had 1 foot over the cliff. So how this historic luxury watch manufacturer from Switzerland supposed to compete with such cheap, easy to produce, even throwaway technology? With such a high level of craftsmanship in watchmaking, it was impossible for AP to mass produce cheap timepieces that could compete with those of the Japanese. Perhaps Audemars Piguet's leaders remembered the well-known saying, "Offense is the best defense." That means not competing, but being smart and going to the upper side way. Back then as now, marketing is everything. So maybe they asked themselves, how about a luxury sports watch? How about a steel sports watch like most before it, but of such a high quality that customers are compelled by an unseen force and attraction to buy it rather than a cheap battery-powered watch? And what do you do when you have an idea about a watch but need someone to realize it? You call Gerald Genta. Genta has often been the linchpin of our channel, and we can't get around him today either. The young Swiss, who had previously designed watches for Universal Genève and Omega, was commissioned to design Audemars Piguet's first luxury sports watch. According to Genta's account, the assignment was simple. The managing director of Audemars Piguet called him on the eve of the annual Swiss Watch Fair, which later became internationally known as Baselworld, and said, "Mr. Genta, we have a distribution company that has asked us for a steel sports watch that has never been made before, and I need the design sketch for tomorrow morning." So he didn't even have a day to create a design that would go down in the 20th century watch history. And no matter the time, Genta has once again delivered. And what he came up with was, as so often, completely unconventional. In an interview a few months before his death in 2011, Genta explained his thought process. He was very impressed when he saw the 8 screws and the rubber seal designed to protect a person's life underwater. He was tempted to put a very prestigious movement in a case that was completely reminiscent of a diving helmet. Interestingly, the very first octagonal watch, a lady's jewelry watch from 1917, was also an Audemars Piguet, but the Royal Oak made this particular case design its own. A design that was later adopted by other bold, rather ornate watches. Both the Bulgari Octofinissimo and the Cartier Santos Octagon are clearly a nod to the original Royal Oak 5402. So Genta and Audemars Piguet dispensed with the traditional round shape of contemporary timepieces and instead choose a tonneau-shaped case with striking octagonal bezel. 8 visible octagonal screws can be seen, further emphasizing the water theme. And this design is complemented by a unique integrated bracelet and a dial with a delicate tape stripe motif that gives the watch a dynamic, sporty look that many other sports watches lack. For the dial, Genta collaborated with the Swiss dial manufacturer Stern Frères, which had recently acquired guilloche machines normally used for engraving silver and gold objects. These machines were made available to Stern Frères by a neighboring workshop as they were no longer needed. Genta was interested in using the machines and chose one of the stencils for the dial of the Royal Oak. The pattern you see in this close-up, now known as the Petite Tapisserie, is made up of hundreds of small pyramid-shaped squares interspersed with tens of thousands of tiny diamond-shaped holes, which together create subtle and unique light effects. However, contrary to what one might think, Genta's watch was not an instant success when it first was presented at the Swiss Watch Fair in 1972. In the display cases on the Audemars Piguet stand, handcrafted stainless steel sports watches shown as the Swiss watchmaker presented them to the watch enthusiasts gathered at one of the industry's biggest events. In contrast to the classic round watch, it looked unusual and strange, had exposed screws, an octagonal bezel and integrated bracelet, and at 3,300 Swiss francs, equivalent to 10,000 US dollars today. It was many times more expensive as a steel model than a contemporary Rolex Submariner. As a further small classification, in 1970, the classic Datejust was sold for around $250 to $350. Furthermore, the Royal Oak was even more expensive than many luxury gold watches. But how could Audemars Piguet justify such a price when even most gold watches were far more affordable? Firstly, it was never intended to be a mass market watch. It could cost more because it was aimed at a specific audience looking for the it factor. Secondly, what made it special was the way the material was treated and finished. At first glance, it looked sporty, but in reality, the watch was haute horlogerie. The tape stripe on the dial alone is an elaborate refinement that takes countless hours and can only be carried out by the best masters of their trade. And thirdly, the Royal Oak was also technically at the top of its class. It was only 7 mm slim, which was mainly due to its ultra-thin caliber 2121. But Genta had many more hurdles to overcome. One of these was his design for the Royal Oak's integrated bracelet. It was the most complex ever made from steel and consisted of 154 components, 34 of which were different sizes. To realize the bracelet, Audemars Piguet turned to another specialist, the Geneva-based company Guy Frères, which also makes bracelets for Rolex in particular. However, despite their experience and equipment, the Guy Frères craftsmen were unable to meet AP's high standards for finishing the bracelet. As with the steel cases produced by Favre and Perret, each bracelet had to be hand-finished by AP's watchmakers in Le Brassus, Switzerland, during case embassy. After the initial lack of success, the popularity of the Royal Oak slowly declined as Audemars Piguet launched massive worldwide advertising campaign focusing on luxury and exclusivity as opposed to mass-produced goods from the Far East. For me personally, one of the best of the 20th century. Slogans like, the most expensive stainless steel watch in the world. It takes more than money to wear a Royal Oak. A tribute to steel. And perhaps the best advertisement, would you buy a Rembrandt for its canvas? Let me read it again for full enjoyment. An acquaintance remarked that at £1,250, the Royal Oak stainless steel watch by Audemars Piguet was more expensive than most gold watches, which was perhaps missing the point. The value of the Royal Oak is more a consequence of the way the metal has been used. The design reflecting its strength and character than the material itself. In any sphere of artistry and craftsmanship, as I pointed out to my friend, materials alone do not make a masterpiece. What matters is the way they are used and who uses them. The fact that it was very expensive was no longer a hurdle with advertisements like that. To summarize, the Royal Oak saved Audemars Piguet's ass during the quartz crisis. And you could even argue that it restored a certain prestige to mechanical watchmaking by making it relevant again. So have a great day and hope to see you in our next video.